is run by a bunch of investment bankers, and Morningstar's tools can help make
Hi, I'm Eric Kobayashi-Solomon, co-editor of Morningstar's Option Investor. Today it's my great pleasure to welcome Brett Horn, who's Associate Director of Research here at Morningstar, to talk about Western Union. Brett, thanks for coming.
No problem.
So just recently, I wrote an option strategy article about Western Union. It's a bullish article. I know you like Western Union a lot, and I just want to ask you a little bit more about this company.
Okay.
So I see that you have Western Union as a wide moat, and of course moat is something that we here at Morningstar talk about for a sustainable competitive advantage. What makes Western Union's wide moat?
Well, there's a few factors. The biggest thing really is scale. This is an industry with a substantial portion of fixed costs. Western Union is 4 to 5 times bigger than their closest competitor. They just have a huge scale advantage, and it shows up in their profitability. You're talking about operating margins for Western Union that are close to double their closest competitor.
So basically what it is they've got a good kind of back office that they can run a lot more.
Right. Basically, once you set up these systems, once you have these systems in place for money transfers, every incremental transaction is the incremental costs that are very, very small. So the more transactions you can run through your system,
right,
the bigger your cost
pure profit, right?
Right.
I see. Now, I think when I first started looking at Western Union, I think a lot of people who are watching this video think of Western Union as from the United States to Latin America to Mexico. But it's really not only that story. In fact, there's a bigger proportion of revenues that are taking place, happening between that corridor in Europe and Africa and South Asia. So can you talk a little bit about the corridors and what corridors they're particularly strong in? And
yeah, I think if you want to think about U.S. to Mexico gets a lot of the headlines around Western Union. It's kind of the headlines for the immigration debate and so on and so forth. But while that's a big market for Western Union, it's less than 10% of their sales.
Right.
This is really truly a global company. They operate in basically every country in the world.
Like 200 countries, something like that.
Yeah.
500,000.
Basically, almost every country that they're legally allowed to operate in, they're in. And there's these corridors it's a global phenomenon. And it's not just U.S. to Mexico. It could be, Saudi Arabia to India. It could be U.S. to China. But the general rule is that you're going to see the money flows from wealthy countries to poor countries.
So, Brett, let's talk about that European corridor for a second. There's been a lot of talk recently in the news about the pigs. This is Portugal, Italy, Greece, and Spain. Do you think that there is the possibility for a double dip there in Europe? Do you think that some of the financial problems that they're having is going to have a knock-on effect to Western Union's business?
Yeah, I think it's something you have to think about. To date, the money transfer industry has been what I would consider fairly resilient. But generally, the dynamic that we've seen is that the immigrants are still sending money; they're just sending a little bit less.
Right.
And the anecdotal evidence we're seeing is that they are dipping into their savings. I mean, it's important to keep in mind that when they're sending money back to their relatives in their home country, this is not discretionary money. This is money so that their relatives can eat and buy necessary things. So they're going to do everything they can to keep sending that money.
Sure.
But the concern would be if you do go into that double dip scenario in, say, Europe or the U.S., that sooner or later they just kind of run out of time and they run out of money.
Sure.
And you could see a significant fall off in money transfers.
I see. And that really affects the revenues, because the word that you just used, resilience, really struck me when I was looking at their financial statements, because even in the depths of this downturn, you see still operating margins are in the mid 20%. It's amazing, right?
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't be concerned. I wouldn't be concerned about the company's financial health at all. I think their profit margins are still fat, and they're still going to stay. They might be a little lower, but they're still going to be a very profitable company. Right. There's really only a modest amount of leverage in the business, financial leverage. So it's not a concern on that end. It's really kind of more if we do go into, and that's really basically from the near term, the performance of Western Union is basically going to depend on how strong is the job market in wealthy countries.
I see.
So if we get a recovery, I would expect to start to see the drivers of their historical growth come back and reassert themselves. Right. But if things drag out or get worse, they're going to have a tougher time.
Sure. But these are kind of near-term things. Even a double dip doesn't last forever, right?
Right.
So since we're in a bullish position here, what do you think is the worst-case scenario, kind of an Armageddon scenario for Western Union?
From a valuation perspective, I think the risk that really would significantly impact the value of the Western Union franchise is that somebody builds a better mousetrap. Somebody figures out a better way to provide money transfers.
It's like using cell phones or something like that.
Yeah, that's the one thing that's there's a lot of talk around. I think the cell phones probably represent the one partially plausible idea. Because the interesting thing, to take into account is like Western Union's customer base are really primarily unbanked or underbanked people.
Right, sure.
That's
pretty sophisticated thing to have a cell phone that will send money.
Right, but if you look at the numbers, there's 4 billion of those people around the world. They are actually the majority. I think it's hard for people in the U.S. or people who invest in the market to understand, the lives of these people. But there are way more cell phones in the world than there are bank accounts. So that maybe represents the one threat. But I think that threat, if it happens, you really need kind of a real evolution in payment system around the world. You'd need mobile phones to be payment devices all around the world, not just in the U.S., and also in these poor countries where these people where they're sending the money. So I think that's a ways away.
So not only payment systems in Japan and U.S., but also in Kenya and Pakistan,
places
or
like that.
And
there's the potential for those poor countries to leapfrog, but really you have to have that worldwide acceptance. I think a lot of poor countries you go to, you could hand somebody in a poor country a prepaid Visa card. They're not going to know what to do with it. And they got nowhere to they take it to their local merchant. They're not going to know what to do with it either. So I think it's a ways away. But I think it also kind of there are some long-term risks. I wouldn't completely discount that as a risk, but I think at the same sense there's as many opportunities for Western Union from a long-term perspective. We talked about this a little bit before. This is a company that's very unique in that they provide a regulated financial service in almost every country in the world.
Right.
And right now they have this very kind of wide network that they're funneling one product through. And I think there are opportunities for them to monetize that network further. It's, things like they recently bought a business that provides business-to-business payments internationally. So things like that. Now, at the same time,
they're starting to look at prepaid cards as well.
Yeah, they're running pilots and all these things. I think, things like prepaid cards worry me considerably less because I think that's a very easy thing to kind of staple onto their existing network.
Right, sure.
I don't think that's a game changer. But I think there are some possibilities to. So if I look into the kind of the long-term future, I think I see as many opportunities as I see risks.
Well, Brett, thanks very much. It's fascinating company.
Sure, thank you.
And thank you for joining us. Please stop by the Option Investor website where you'll find many more great option ideas based on Morningstar's fundamental research.
At Morningstar, we feel it is important to schedule regular checkups of your investments. This is the reason we're pleased to announce Portfolio Monitor, a new and easier way to keep track of your investments. With a few clicks of the mouse, receive a monthly report that provides a comprehensive and customized summary of your portfolio, sent automatically to your inbox. Portfolio Monitor provides a concise digest of all the best features of premium membership. Become a premium member with our 14-day free trial to start receiving Portfolio Monitor today.